My name is Grace Cornett. I'm 28 years old, and for 5 years I was his rock, or maybe his doormat. The night everything started, my phone buzzed at 11:37 p.m. I was half asleep after another brutal day at work, the kind where your bones hum with exhaustion. I didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. Danny. I stared at his name glowing in the dark for a moment, debating. Then it rang again and again. The kind of insistence that always meant emergency. With a sigh, I answered, Danny. The sound that came through wasn't words, it was a broken sob. Issa? He ghosted me. His voice cracked. Chloe. After 3 dates, she just vanished. I sat up, rubbed my temples. Here we go again. Okay, slow down. What happened? He spilled everything in messy, hiccuping bursts. The text she didn't answer, the way her profile suddenly disappeared, the endless self-blame. It was the same story with different names every time. Once it was Julia, then Lila, then the one who sold crystals online, and now Chloe. By the time he finished, I already knew the script. You're not an idiot, I murmured. She's a coward. That line always worked. It made him feel seen, even if it left me invisible. Do you want me to come over? There was a pause. Then in a small, cracked voice, would you? And just like that, the boundary I'd promised myself I'd enforce dissolved again. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on his couch watching him inhale spoonfuls of cookie dough ice cream straight from the tub. His hair was a mess, eyes red, wearing that same hoodie from college that smelled faintly of laundry soap and heartbreak. He was beautiful in that careless, unreachable way, and I hated that my heart still leapt for him, even when he was crying over someone else. She didn't even give me closure, he muttered. You don't need her closure, Danny. You just need... He interrupted me, voice trembling. You. I don't know what I'd do without you, Issa. You're my rock. And then it came. The word that always gutted me in slow motion. Seriously. You're like the sister I never had. I smiled, the practiced one that hides the sting. Yeah, I whispered. That's me. Inside, something cracked. But outside, I nodded, brushed his shoulder, and told him to get some sleep. When I stepped outside, the night air was cool, heavy with silence. My reflection in the dark car window looked foreign, tired eyes, faint smile, a woman who gave too much and received too little. The streetlight flickered above me as I thought, he'll never see me the way I see him. As I drove home, a thought burned in my chest, sharper than the ache. If I'd known that night would be the beginning of the end, I might have let the phone keep ringing. The following Friday should have been one of the happiest days of my life. After years of staying late at the office, fixing other people's mistakes, and sacrificing weekends for deadlines, I finally got promoted senior account manager. It was the kind of position I dreamed of since college, a real milestone. So I organized a small dinner at Luca's Bistro, my favorite spot downtown. Warm lighting, soft jazz, and the smell of garlic butter, everything perfect for a night that was supposed to be mine. Danny arrived late as always. He breezed in with that careless smile that made people forgive him for everything. Sorry. Traffic was a nightmare, he said, dropping into the chair beside me. I smiled anyway. You made it, that's what matters. Across the table, our friends Matt and Jen clinked their glasses, congratulating me. To Grace, the boss lady. We laughed, and for a brief second I felt seen. Then Danny's phone buzzed. He looked down, grinned wide. Oh my God, you guys, look at this one. He turned his screen toward us. A photo of a girl in a sundress hair spilling over her shoulders. Eyes wide and flirtatious. Her name's Chloe, he said, his voice bright. We matched this morning. She's into yoga and art films. Jen smiled politely. Matt muttered, nice. I froze mid-sip. The warmth from my wine curdled in my stomach. You met her today? I asked lightly. Yeah, Danny said, scrolling. We've been talking nonstop. She's different, Issa. Not like... You know the others. He laughed softly, eyes glued to the screen. The others. A familiar chorus in his endless playlist of heartbreaks. I stared at the candle between us, the tiny flame flickering against my wine glass. My chest felt tight, not from jealousy, but from the sick realization that I'd just vanished again. I was there but not seen, present but not important. My promotion, my success, my moment had just become another backdrop to his romantic chaos. Matt cleared his throat. So Grace, tell us what's next for you at work? Oh, I forced a smile. Bigger clients. More pressure. You know how it is. But no one was listening. Danny was already typing something on his phone, smiling like a teenager in love. Jen caught my eyes briefly, a flicker of sympathy before she looked away. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just invisible to Danny. I'd become invisible to everyone who existed within his orbit. Later that night, I stood outside the restaurant as everyone left. The laughter of couples floated through the air, sharp and effortless. Danny hugged me briefly, distracted, his breath warm near my ear. "Text me when you get home, sis," he said. There it was again. Sis. The dull, familiar knife, twisting deeper. I watched him walk away under the streetlight's, phone already in hand, thumb dancing across the screen, probably texting Chloe. Inside my chest, something shifted, quiet but final. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was clarity. Either way, I whispered to myself, no more late-night calls, no more saving someone who wouldn't cross the street to save me. The camera of my mind panned out the glowing restaurant lights behind me, my reflection in the window. A woman realizing she'd been playing a supporting role in her own story. And for the first time in years, I felt an unfamiliar, dangerous word forming inside me. Enough. A week later, I told myself I was done. No more waiting by the phone. No more pretending the word sister didn't make me flinch. But when Danny texted coffee, I need to talk, I still said yes. Except this time I had my own reason for going. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the windows, scattering gold across the scratched wooden tables. The smell of espresso and cinnamon clung to the air, the scent of too many conversations I'd had with him over the years. Danny waved when he saw me, that familiar grin easing across his face. "Isa, over here." I sat down, trying to still the pounding in my chest. So he said, stirring his drink absent-mindedly, "Guess what, Chloe and I are official now." He said it with the bright, naive pride of someone announcing they'd won a prize. I smiled politely. "That's great, Danny." But something in me snapped, maybe the polite smile, maybe the years of pretending I was fine. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. "Do you ever realize how often you call me your sister?" He blinked, surprised. Yeah, I guess, because you're like family to me. You've always been there." "That's the problem," I said quietly. "I'm always there. Every heartbreak, every crisis, every time you need someone to pick up the pieces. And I do it because..." My throat tightened. "Because I care about you, more than I should." He froze. His spoon clattered softly against the cup. "Isa?" "I'm in love with you, Danny." There it was. The truth. Raw and trembling, hanging in the air like a confession in church. For a second, he just stared at me, eyes wide. Then he smiled, soft, kind, devastating. "Isa, what we have is special. You know that. But it's pure. It's not messy like that." "Messy," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," he nodded earnestly. "You make me feel safe. With Chloe, it's different. There's that spark, that excitement. You know." The word safe landed like a hammer blow. The nicest possible way to say you don't make my heart race. I stared at him, really looked the boy I'd known since college, the man I'd carried through every storm. And in that moment, I finally saw it. He didn't love me. He loved the way I loved him. I forced a small smile. "So I'm your safety net?" "No," he said quickly, reaching for my hand. "You're my foundation. There's a difference." A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "Foundations don't get noticed, Danny. They just hold everything else up while no one looks down." He blinked, confused, maybe even hurt, but I didn't owe him clarity anymore. I stood, pulled a few bills from my wallet, and placed them beside my untouched coffee. "Congratulations on your relationship," I said, my voice steady, eerily calm. "I hope your spark doesn't burn out too fast." His lips parted like he wanted to say something, but I was already walking toward the door. Outside, the sky had turned dusky blue. A chill swept through the air, brushing against my face like a benediction. Behind me, I heard him call, "Isa, wait!" But I didn't. For 5 years, I'd waited for him to see me. Now it was his turn to watch me walk away. As the door swung shut behind me, the sound of the bell echoed like the last note of a song finally ending. And for the first time, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt release. The next morning, my alarm went off at 6:30. I stared at the ceiling for a full minute, waiting for the familiar ache in my chest. But there was only silence. No buzz of incoming messages, no flood of "good morning sis" texts, no emotional emergency waiting to hijack my day. The quiet was strange, like waking up in a new apartment where even the echoes didn't know your name yet. And then slowly it became peaceful. By noon, I had done something I should have done years ago. I opened my phone and one by one erased him. Block, delete, mute, remove connection. Instagram, Facebook, messages. Even LinkedIn, because apparently friendship can haunt you even in the workplace tab. The final click felt surgical clean. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. I didn't announce it. I didn't text him some dramatic goodbye. I simply disappeared. For the first week, it felt like detoxing from a drug. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart still jumped. Every time I passed the cafe, I half expected to see him there. But instead of pain, what came was space. And in that space, I started remembering what I actually liked. I redecorated my apartment, painted the walls, white hung art. I'd bought years ago, but never had time to frame. I went to the gym, not to vent, but to build. I started cooking again the kind of food I used to love before late-night phone calls replaced dinner. My coworkers noticed. "You look lighter," one said. I just smiled, because I was. Danny's absence came in waves of silence until it didn't. Day 3. "Danny, Asa, are you mad at me? Come on, this is childish. We're adults." I saw the notification flash on my smartwatch before it vanished into digital nothing. I didn't reply. Day 5. "Danny." "Okay, fine. Be that way. Chloe and I are going to the rooftop jazz bar tonight. You'd hate it anyway, too loud for your taste." He was trying to sting me with FOMO. I smiled faintly, stirring my tea. He was right. I would have hated it. By the second week, the quiet had become my favorite sound. I slept deeply, ate slowly, breathed fully. I filled the spaces where he used to exist with things that were wholly mine: long walks, podcasts, sketching again. And in one of those quiet afternoons, life handed me something unexpected. I was in a bookstore downtown browsing the design section when a voice beside me said, "Good choice, but if you're starting with mid-century architecture, that one's got better context." I turned. A man stood there holding out a different book, his eyes kind but curious. "Thanks," I said, taking it. "I'm just branching out." He smiled. "A good habit. I'm Daniel." We ended up talking for 20 minutes about architecture minimalism and the absurd price of coffee in the cafe next door. It was easy. No emotional caretaking. No invisible weight pressing on my chest. Just two people talking. When he left, I realized something startling. I hadn't thought of Danny once during that conversation. That night, I stood on my balcony, phone in hand, the city lights blinking like distant stars. For years, I'd carried Danny, like a ghost, invisible, but always there. Now, for the first time, I felt that ghost fading. And as the air grew cool around me, I whispered into the dark, "Goodbye, Danny." Not bitterly, not dramatically, just peacefully. Because sometimes healing isn't loud. It's the quiet decision to stop answering a call that should have gone to voicemail years ago. 3 months passed. The kind of months that don't rush, they unfold gently like soft music after a storm. Daniel and I had settled into a rhythm that felt simple. Not the frantic chase of proving my worth, not the endless cycle of saving someone from themselves. Just quiet mornings, shared coffee-long conversations about art and laughter that didn't come at my expense. Sometimes he'd cook, sometimes I would. He'd tease me about burning toast, and I'd mock his obsession with labeling spice jars alphabetically. It wasn't fireworks, it was warmth. And warmth lasts longer than sparks. It was a Sunday evening when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then again. Then again. I sighed, finally checking it. Unknown. "Isa, it's Danny. I know you blocked me. I'm using my mom's phone. Please. I messed up. You were the only person who ever cared about me. Chloe's gone. She used me. Please talk to me." I stared at the message, blank. Daniel looked up from where he was chopping onions. "Everything okay?" I showed him the phone, an old friend. He glanced at the text, eyebrows lifting. Yikes! Desperation practically oozes out of that. I gave a small, tired laugh. "Yeah, he's persistent." Daniel reached for my hand. "You going to reply?" "No," I said simply and blocked the number. The relief was immediate, like shutting a window on a cold wind. A week later, we went out to celebrate Matt's birthday. The restaurant was the same one I'd gone to with Danny months ago, Luca's Bistro. The déjà vu made my stomach tighten. But tonight I wasn't alone. Daniel's hand rested on mine across the table, his thumb tracing slow circles against my skin. I was mid-laugh at one of Matt's terrible jokes when the door opened and in walked Danny. He froze in the doorway. The world seemed to tilt. For a second, his face was unreadable shock, confusion, disbelief. Then his gaze dropped to our hands. Our fingers were intertwined. Effortless, natural, something he'd never let himself give me. The blood drained from his face. "Isa," he breathed, walking toward our table. "Wow, it's been forever." He sounded casual, but his voice wobbled. He didn't look at Daniel, only at me. I smiled politely. "Hi, Danny." He gestured between us, his grin stretched thin. "And this is Daniel, my boyfriend." The word hit him like a punch. His composure faltered for half a heartbeat before he forced a laugh. "Boyfriend, huh? That was fast. Daniel chuckled softly, his tone calm but firm. Not really. We've been together for months. Danny turned to me, trying to reclaim ground. We've known each other for years, he said, his voice louder now. We're best friends. I looked at Daniel, warmth flooding my chest. My best friend is right here. Danny's smile collapsed. The entire table went silent. Jen looked down at her drink. Matt cleared his throat awkward. I stood slipping on my coat. We were just leaving anyway. Daniel rose beside me, placing a protective hand at the small of my back. Not possessive, just grounding. I could feel Danny's stare burning holes through me as we walked past. He called out voice tight, Isa, wait! But I didn't, not this time. The door swung shut behind us with a soft chime cutting off whatever words he tried to form. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Daniel squeezed my hand. You okay? I smiled. Yeah, perfectly. For once I didn't need to prove it. I was free. That night, as we cooked dinner together, my phone buzzed again, another unknown number. Unknown. Isa, please. I can't stop thinking about you. I made a mistake. I see it now. You were my home. I handed the phone to Daniel. He read it, then looked at me with a small smirk. She doesn't miss you, he said. She misses the service you provided. I laughed the kind of laugh that comes from deep relief. He was right. Danny didn't love me. He loved the version of himself I helped him sustain. So I blocked the number again and went back to chopping vegetables. For the first time in my life, a man's breakdown wasn't my responsibility. And that felt divine. 2 months later, Danny's messages became unpredictable, a roulette of moods. One morning, a nostalgic text, unknown. Remember when we got lost driving back from the coast and sang terrible 80s songs? You said I couldn't carry a tune, and I said you sounded like a dying cat. I miss that. I miss us. That evening, another, unknown. I'm sorry, Isa. I didn't know what I had. Please, let's just meet for coffee. Just to talk. Then a day later, unknown. You can't just replace me after everything. 5 years, Grace. You don't throw that away for some random guy. I need you. Each message came from a new number, a new attempt to claw back into the life I'd closed off. And each time I hit block with the same calm finality as before. Daniel and I joked about it sometimes. He'd glance at my phone and say, Guess your brother is having another crisis. We'd laugh not cruelly but freely because the pain wasn't mine to carry anymore. Then came the final scene. A Sunday morning, fluorescent grocery store lights humming softly above. I was standing in aisle 7 comparing cereal boxes, Cheerios, or Raisin Bran when I heard it. Isa, that voice. I froze. I turned and there he was, Danny. Except not the version I remembered. He looked hollow. Hair unwashed, dark circles bruised under his eyes, a crumpled hoodie hanging off his shoulders. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the refrigerators filled the space between us. Then the words spilled out of him, frantic, desperate, practiced. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I messed up. The biggest mistake of my life. I was scared of how real it felt between us, Isa. What I felt for you, it wasn't brotherly. I was lying to myself. I love you. He stood there, chest heaving, eyes wet, waiting for me to save him again. And once I might have. But now I just felt tired. I looked at him and I didn't see the man I'd loved for years. I saw a stranger who was mourning a fantasy, not me. I appreciate you saying that, I said quietly. His eyes lit up a spark of hope. So what does that mean? Can we just talk? Please grab coffee like old times. I shook my head slowly. I'm really happy with Daniel. And I'm glad we can finally be what you always said we were. He frowned, confused. What's that supposed to mean? I smiled soft but final. Friends. Or better yet. I paused, eyes steady. Brother and sister. The word hung between us, the same word that once chained me to him. Only now it was his turn to feel the weight of it. He blinked, face collapsing disbelief first, then heartbreak, then something like regret. Isa, please. His voice broke. But I'd already turned away. Take care of yourself, Danny. My cart rolled forward. The wheels squeaked against the linoleum as I turned down the next aisle, the coffee aisle. My phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. Don't forget the coffee, and I love you. I smiled a full, effortless smile that reached my eyes. Already on it, love you too. I dropped a bag of coffee beans into the cart, pushed it toward the checkout, and stepped into the bright morning light. Behind me, somewhere in aisle 7, Danny was still standing silent, shattered, lost in the echo of a word he once used to keep me small. But that word didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged to him. Because for the first time in years, I was